Hello, welcome back to another episode of Seeing Things. Chapter 9, The Haunted City Block. That the workers at the hospital were frightened and refused to travel near the old graveyard because many bodies were not always buried in the hallowed ground of the graveyard. Hello, welcome back to another episode of Seeing Things. This is Colette, and I'm here to tell you another scary story. I'm sitting out here, it's like thunderstorming. I hope you all can hear me just fine, but it felt right. It felt like the right setting to read this story. Just a little bit of personal history. I used to work at a business. I was a seamstress for a local company. Their shop that I worked out of was in this block. And honestly, it's really strange because the whole block is just kind of nothing going on there. It's like surrounded by all this activity, but it just seems like anyone who's tried to do anything there, it just doesn't go anywhere. Like the businesses don't thrive. This is such an interesting story for me personally. Watching the last decade, the growth in the area, but this spot still remains just empty. So if you want me to go and show you what I'm talking about, go ahead and like and subscribe. If I get enough interest in this, I will take the effort to go down there and take my dowsing rods and spare a bucks to go explore this area and show you what I mean. So let me tell you why it's weird. The Haunted City Block, Chapter 9. The plans of the city and the developers are well underway to incorporate the block and give it all the positive amenities bestowed on present development downtown and in the B&T ball field corridor. The old-timers all agreed when discussing the haunted block. Nearly all people who lived and worked within this block came to believe the details of the dark past that led to its ultimate demise. The year 2016 marks 250 years of wayfarers who have traveled the old Shaliford Road, with most coming in contact with the haunted block. The land that made up most of the block existed near the crossroads between Old Salem and Old Winston. After the Civil War, a small pocket neighborhood was developed by African Americans, including a church, a store, and a small graveyard. In the late 1880s, it was decided a hospital for the poor was to be built on the old plank road, Brookstown Avenue today. The Twin City Hospital was constructed circa 1890 on Brookstown Avenue. The old-timers believed some type of evil force had arrived by way of the old plank road long before the hospital was built. But the hospital and all that went on within the hospital, including the grounds surrounding the institution, seemed to enrich the negative forces within the block. Mr. Johns reminds us that the conjurers, witches, and the like arrived here throughout the heyday of the great migration of settlers. The lost graveyard of Chutes Lane could have experienced something similar to that evil curse. Permit me to clarify something about the lost graveyard before we continue. The Chutes, like the Fanslers, had slaves and freedmen on their farm, plantation. Churches and graveyards were usually a part of the living quarters and surroundings of the African Americans throughout the plantation. When the Twin City Hospital arrived in the late 19th century, the old graveyard was already around 40 years old. Unfortunately, records, including those of the Chutes business ventures, are sketchy in Old Winston history. What is known is that the Twin City Hospital, like most Victorian hospitals of the time, was predominantly for the poor. Wealthy and affluent clients were taken care of at home by doctors who performed house calls. Often the success rate for the patients at early hospitals was not good, and the patients died. The Twin City Hospital budget was tight, and if a patient passed and there was no one to claim the body, the hospital was responsible for the burial. The old-timers had relatives who were associated with the early hospital as nurses and custodians, and the stories told by them were rather macabre. When a patient passed and no one claimed the body, it was disposed of in or near the African American graveyard. The hospital had taken over the abandoned graveyard and sat behind it, between the church and Chute Lane. It was reported by locals around the haunted block that the workers at the hospital were frightened and refused to travel near the old graveyard because many bodies of the deceased patients were not always buried in the hallowed ground of the graveyard, but elsewhere on hospital property. Plus, the makeshift graves did not have proper coffins or even wooden boxes. Most had no markers or tombstones to identify the dead. The Twin City Hospital was replaced a mere 15 years after being constructed by the new City Hospital in East Winston. Supposedly, the Twin City Hospital was to be used as a satellite-type backup, much like the rescue mission and charity hospitals of today. The evil that had arrived long ago was attracted to the unsanctified graveyard created by the hospital, and literally all hell broke loose. Screams, dark shadows, and chaos became the norm for the workers at the hospital and those who lived throughout the block. It had gotten so bad that the leaders of the city hospital decided to close the branch hospital. A short time later, not only was the hospital abandoned, but parts of the structure were also dismantled. However, what was to happen to the graveyard that seemed to be the center of the block's problems was more sinister. Mysteriously, and then in the dead of night, the graveyard, along with any trace of it, was dismantled. The headstones and markers disappeared forever. Mr. Johns related a silver lining to our story. When I think of the small and fragile little girl, tears well up in my eyes even today. Years later. You see, the Twin City Hospital was a pauper's hospital, but the last patient that crossed their threshold was a little miracle. I believe she helped to end, for a long time, the problems that generated from the desecrated graveyard. The little angel had showed up to downtown Winston in the teens of 1900. She seemed to live on the street, yet no one knew much about her. Everyone wanted to help her, but she always seemed to help the ones who had tried to assist her more. Elizabeth was the only name we knew her by. She was Winston's version of the little match girl. She could brighten your day, even if it was the worst you could have possibly had, as she stood in the 400 block of North Liberty Street, the center of town in this time period, selling her wares and matches. She was only 8 or 9 years old and was always asked by the adults, "Where are your parents or grandparents? A relative, little one?" Her answer was always the same and always so reassuring. "My father is coming to get me soon." That smile, I can see it as if it was yesterday. Mr. Johns began to cry. He continued after a pause. "A few weeks later, one bitterly cold December afternoon, I spied Elizabeth on the corner of downtown in rags and no shoes. A crowd was around her and I joined them. 'We need to get the little girl a coat and shoes,' everyone said. 'This could be the end of our little angel,' they all vocalized. Amazement overcame us all with what came next. A bright light arose around the little girl as she responded with the softest words. 'I am fine. My father will be here shortly.' We stayed with the little girl until nightfall, but her dad did not come. We rushed her to City Hospital. They were told she could not pay, even though those present wanted to help. We were directed to the Twin City Hospital, and we arrived after dark. Only one nurse was on duty, and she informed us that all other patients had been released or, more truthfully, had died. Elizabeth was the last patient at the hospital forever. The next day, we returned to the hospital to check on Elizabeth. The nurse and the doctor who were on duty told us the terrible news. Elizabeth had passed late in the night. The doctor excused himself, and the nurse explained the strange events of her death. The hour before her demise was described by the nurse. I had left the patient's room and returned a short time later. The little girl had gotten out of bed and left the premises of the hospital. Something drew me to the window, and there, in the field, near the old graveyard, stood the patient. She was all aglow in the most beautiful light I had ever seen. As a nurse who had witnessed many deaths of patients, this type of occurrence has never happened. I gained my composure, raised the window, and hollered to the girl. The cold wind nearly chilled me to the bone. As Elizabeth responded, her words were so calming and reassuring. She smiled and spoke. "My father has come for me." A beacon of light, as if from heaven itself, surrounded her. The grounds of the old graveyard began to shake, and I could feel the quake inside the hospital. The girl's spirit appeared to exit her body along with a multitude of other spirits who exited their grave behind the little one. The crowds of adults were awestruck and proceeded to ask the nurse if she had reported this to the doctor. She responded very directly, "I need my job, so no." The little angel had returned to her rightful father, and the silver lining to our story was not her death, but the spirits she rescued from the unholy graveyard. For a time thereafter, the evil was eliminated and the haunted block was clear. The effects lasted until the 1960s, when the problems returned. Different residents and businesses within the block between Fayette Street and First Street began to experience supernatural events once more. Mysterious lights, screams in the night, and ungodly shadows permeated the neighborhood. Most families had to eventually move or abandon their homes. I mean, that's pretty serious. Like, people actually moved because of this. That's not a small thing. The police were called many times to the block, but could not find any physical evidence for these happenings. They told the residents that dealing with metaphysical occurrences was not part of their job description. I personally had the opportunity to visit the block in the 1980s to attend a Big Brother, Big Sister meeting in one of the few houses that still remained. After the meeting, we stayed and conversed about the goings-on in the old house, since many in attendance, including myself, felt a creepy feeling while there. Those employed were eager to weave their own tales of the poltergeist activity there. Things were often moved, shadows were present and visible, touches were felt. No one wanted to stay after dark, and we were all glad the organization would soon be moved to a new building far away from the block. After the move, the empty buildings were razed and new construction was attempted. Several projects started in the 1990s, but they only made it to the stage of digging basements. The projects mysteriously stopped before they could complete the basements. Several holes and unfinished grading can be found in this wasteland even today. New construction associated with the ball fields projects include hotels, eateries, and businesses is in the works. I hope that along the way, the evil that once resided here will not be resurrected, but only time will tell. So that's the story. If you would like to see me go show you the area that this hospital and abandoned graveyard apparently once stood, let me know. I'll go take, some of my investigation tools over there, go see what we can find. I'm going to guess I can find something. I've been over there a lot. I've been in that area a lot. This was previous to me understanding kind of the history of it there. It's just like a dead space. So I would be curious to see what comes through. If you'd like to see me go out on more adventures in Winston-Salem, please let me know. There are so many more stories. That's just the tip of the iceberg. This city is insane. So much underground water movement. I think that just provides so much. Oh, and cave systems. Oh my goodness. Yeah, we are actually technically in the Uwari according to Native American tradition. Our foothills here are not the foothills of Blue Ridge Mountains. We are actually the edge of the Uwari mountain range, which explains a lot of phenomenon. If you know anything about that, please check here for any information regarding the Uwari and some of the cryptids you might find there. We have been exploring so much. It has been super fascinating. I would love to hear from you. Please let me know if you've had any crazy experiences in Winston-Salem.